Thank you. For the year that I've been praying over, but this is something different. I want you to write down the biggest goal that you want to manifest this year, because remember, our theme is living new thought through demonstration. So I know who wasn't here last week. I know. If you'd fill this out during the service and then get it back to me, Scott. At the end of the service would be good. Okay, everybody else got one? You didn't last week?
Oh, I was here last week.
Yeah. It's okay. So as I said, I've been talking about the top 4 aspects of religious science, which is a form of new thought, about what it is, how it works, how we receive it, etc., and finished it up last week as the 5th one. And so we're going to continue developing that information deeper as the year goes by, because all that information supports us in our theme, which is, as I said, living new thought through demonstration. So that's part of new thought, is being able to demonstrate our life, how we're changing our minds, what it is that we want. And I've also been talking about the bottom part of these words that I put up here, I think the end of last year, which are different words that we use in new thought. And so we're going to touch on some of those too as we go along. Today we're going to continue with consciousness and oneness, because that kind of involves in everything, and especially with what I want to talk about today. We're also going to touch a little bit about fear and ego, which leads to duality, which thinks that we're separate from God and from somewhere else. And this information that I'm sharing with you is very important in all aspects of our life. So it affects us in our relationships, in our work or career, our health, our prosperity and abundance, in all aspects. And the last one, prosperity and abundance, probably has the most reaction around it, because we were taught so much growing up that money isn't spiritual and that it's wrong, and all these negative thoughts that go on about it. But we have to really get clear about that, because it gets in our way. And so it's the topic that I'm going to be talking about today and next Sunday in the form of tithing our money and our talents. So I was going to share about it later in the talk, because there's 4 parts to the talk that go on today, but then Spirit said no. Start off right off the bat by talking about tithing. And so what I want to do, and by mentioning this word so that those that have a reaction to it can kind of look at it as I'm talking about it and hopefully try to change some of it. So I'm going to put this and this and this up here. This is what's called a billfold, a checkbook, which has checks in it that I can write for money. My wallet carries money inside of it. And sometimes we get to the point where we feel like we're living in duality. Here's God and money. Well, that's not true. There's only one. It's God. So God is in this. I'm only the caretaker of it. God is the one that supplies the money for me through the work that I do, or however it comes to me, and how it goes out in tithing to the church and to bills I pay and to other things like that, to take care of my life. And so while I talk about it, I want to bless this today and bless all of yours, and just put this up there as a figment for you guys to look at and say, well, there's a checkbook, there's money in this billfold, here's my talents that are in this bag that I get to use here at the church or in my life with my work, etc., and see how we go along with the talk. So the first part, as I said, there's 4 parts. The first part is called Immovable Faith. And that's very important, because we need that to really change our thinking about our health and about our job and our prosperity and our abundance and so forth. So Mahatma Gandhi taught the following: I do dimly perceive that while everything around me is changing and ever dying, there is underlying all that change a living power that is changeless, that holds all together, that creates, dissolves, and recreates. That informing power of Spirit is God, and this realization is preceded by an immovable faith. Take that into your mind, like this mountain. We could move a mountain if we said, move it, and totally believe that it could. Jesus said that in the Bible. But if we look at the strength of that, immovable faith is so strong inside of me that nothing outside of me can move it. I know I am one with God, and God is taking care of me with everything. So as students of metaphysics and new thought, we discover, and we talk about it here all the time, how our thoughts, our emotions, our attitudes affect the circumstances in our life. They affect our relationships, they affect our health, they affect our pocketbooks. So mind, thought, and the world and the word are one and the same thing. Mind, thought, and the world. What I create in my world from my thoughts is one. There is no separation. Everything is everything else, because the realm of the power of spirit is everything and everywhere at one place. So everything is part of this. All of you, everything that's going on in our world. As we discover and yield to our higher spiritual awareness and true self, we understand more and more that there is nothing separate from our Heavenly Father. Nothing separate from God. Nothing separate from Source, the source of all that we have in our mind. That means that money that's in my wallet is not separate from God. It's all connected to the divine mind, as is yours. We know every day is filled with all sorts of opportunities for seeking and discovering this greater truth. Independent of any dogma that may be around, creed or ceremony, which a lot of religions have, free from superstition, there is only one mind, beloveds. It is the mind of God. And all experience and all beings are in and out of this mind all the time. Think about that going on, that we move into the consciousness and we move out of it at times. We separate ourselves, we come back to unity. We forget, we remember. The great, the good, the wise of every age has brought this information to us. They've examined it, they've grasped it, they've shared it. And we're here doing the same thing. One of the forms of sharing that is through spiritual mind treatment, which I talked about last week or 2 weeks ago. And that I do here. I've said that before. If anybody needs a spiritual mind treatment after service, I'm here. But it is the movement from awareness of the one mind to consciously unifying with it. First of all, you start with the awareness, and then you unify with it, and then you get deeper realization and grateful acceptance of that truth with immovable faith, and then anything can happen in your lives. It is God flowing from itself, through itself, to itself, by means of me and you. How cool is that? That God is here flowing through each and every one of you, whether you're aware of it or not. That's why we're here. Our biggest vision for our soul is to be in this physical body and be here to allow God's love and light to flow through us. God's health and well-being. God's prosperity and abundance. We are the vehicles. We need to open up to that and say, yes, I agree, I take it in. The mystic minds of every age tell us over and over again that infinite mind is the primary existence of everything that has been, everything that is now, and everything that will be. So not only does it flow through us itself and everything, it is all there from the beginning now to the end, where there is no end. It just goes on. That's all there is gone. That's all we are. That's all, everything is part of us. It is the formless, intangible forever that becomes tangible by way of our belief. We really take it into ourselves, and we demonstrate it through new thought. When we know this, and we know that we know it, which is a whole different thing, you really got to know inside that I know this and I believe it, then we get to experience our own souls greeting themselves as our lives and everyone in them. So our soul is greeting us all the time and greeting every other soul that looks to be in this physical form. Or whatever else experience that you have during the day, the people you're meeting in the world, the people you work with. It is God flowing through us in everything. In Galileo's time, people had trouble believing that Earth revolved around the sun. Well, the Master Jesus had taught that it is done unto you as to you believe. And for 2,000 years, people have had trouble believing that lesson. It is done unto you as you believe. That means we have to change our thoughts. How are we thinking about ourselves? How are we thinking about our life? In 1939, Ernest Holmes, who's the founder of Science of Mind, wrote this: "Love is self-givingness through creation. the inspiration of the divine through the human, which is our vision, manifesting, living new thought through demonstration. It's the renewing of our mind. It's the divine coming through the human in everything we do. So our challenge now, beloveds, is to wake up to this truth and realize that transforming our world by the renewing of our mind is not difficult. What is difficult is choosing to do it. Because we forget, or we go, oh, it can't be that easy just to change a thought. We forget about it, we get caught up in experiences of life and so forth, when in fact all we have to do is renew our mind. Immovable faith is the key to the treasure chest of wholeness, creativity, love, health, prosperity. It's the key to well-being in all of our relationships and the deep joy of self-awareness and the capacity to live as a positive part of the whole, and it's ours to choose through immovable faith. I want you to think about that when it comes down to your health, when it comes down to prosperity and abundance, when you look at money and letting go. Renew your mind, change the thoughts. So let's talk about tithing, number 2 today. Of all of the subjects discussed in New Thought, tithing is perhaps the most controversial and misunderstood. It is universally taught by ministers and teachers, students throughout the movement as the quickest and surest way to get to prosperity and abundance. But the idea of tithing for many people is surrounded by a lot of guilt, doubt, magical thinking, fear. People in the world and here have had past experiences of some church leader that continually asks them for money and say, we have to do this, we have to add this, we have to add this. That's not who we are. There is no accounting. Some believe that tithing is rigid goals. That's not us. It is fluid. It flows through us as we allow it to. Some people don't want others to know how much they tithe. That's not us. Because tithing is a personal commitment between you and God to support this church and to support yourself. So, there's a lot of different things that come up that is fear. Some people have a reaction and fear to it because it's mentioned in the Bible, and I have such a dislike for the Bible or the way it was, and all that is because it's more of an interpretation of the Bible rather than the deeper understanding, the mystical part of what the Bible is speaking about. Because for us, it is a spiritual truth. We talk about our health, we talk about relationships, we talk about work, we talk about money. It's all one. It's all part of God. And it's a spiritual truth to be part of the giving and the receiving of God's good. God wants to have us have that good. We have to really take that in, beloveds. One of the earmarks of New Thought is that we consider ourselves to be students of the truth, the greater truth. That's what we come here for. So therefore, we don't function on the basis of dogma or hearsay, rules or regulations or literal interpretation of the Bible. We go to the higher truth of what it is, what we can produce in our life or demonstrate through thought, through feeling, through our personal experience, and through demonstration. Living new thought through demonstration with everything in our life. So, when I first got involved in New Thought, tithing was a new concept to me. And I approached it with a great deal of suspicion, as a lot of people do. I kept wondering, well, this tithing thing, does that mean there's a God up there, some guy who's watching me, seeing how much I give and how much I'm going to return back to me multiplied? I kind of doubted that. But then I thought, well, is this a ploy by my Unity Church, which was the first New Thought church I was involved in, to make me feel guilty and have me give them my money? Maybe. Was this absolute baloney falling in the same woo categories as spells and magic and superstition? Perhaps. There was a lot of things that went on through my mind. I go through everyone's. But since I was getting a lot out of being at this New Thought church, my mind and my life started to change. There was a lot that I was receiving from it. And since tithing was one of the basic principles spoken of and taught of by this movement, I decided that I needed to explore it much deeper and find out what is this thing called tithing. What sort of answers could I trust and find faith, that unmovable faith inside of myself regarding it. So my first thought was I need to get a clear definition of it. So it was later on when I moved to Albuquerque and I went to a Science of Mind church. Edwina Gaines, who teaches a lot of, that's her goal in life, if you ever met her or listened to her, is to change the whole world's prosperity, abundance, consciousness. And she's really good at it. And so here we were talking more about tithing and religious science, and guess what? She came and did a workshop, which I went to. And her idea of tithing kind of helped me out a lot. So according to her, she said tithing is giving 10% of all you receive back to your source of your spiritual food. It is not the same as a charitable contribution to someone in need, because charity is a good thing, but it's not tithing. Tithing is not giving the 10% directly back to the person and place from where you received it. You don't give it back to that person, that place, or organization that gave it to you, but rather to your spiritual source, which could be a lot of different things. It could be your church. It could be maybe there's somebody in your life that came and gave you some spiritual food in some way that helped you out, or said something to you that helped you. It could be a place that you go to that you feel like you're receiving something from it. That could be it. Also, she said your whole tithe does not have to go to the same place. It may be divided among several people in places, which I do. I have 3 of them. So as long as the people in the places have been the source of your spiritual food. So let's let that sit there for a moment to know that tithing is just giving back to where you received your spiritual food. And let's talk about number 3, which is believing that you receive, because that's a big part of this. The statement that was attributed to Jesus said, whatever things you ever ask for when you pray, believe that you receive them and you shall have them. Boy, that's a powerful prayer, isn't it? Believe that you will have it and it will be there. It's only for a thought. It doesn't say if you do this right, or you behave this way, or you act this way. Just believe. Just have a thought. And watch, where do my thoughts come up that get in the way? Where do I feel lack in any aspect of my life? Fenwick Holmes, who's the brother of Ernest Holmes, the founder of Science of Mind, stated this: if I can know anything at all, I can know I am. And if I know that I am, I can know that I think. And if I know that I think, I then can depend on the sanctity and the reasonableness of my thinking. Again, talking about our thoughts. Therefore, a question that we should ask ourselves with that statement is what I think really what I think? Is what I think really what I think? Or is it just my ego up? Is it just some little thing coming? Is it really a part of me? I need to pay attention to that. Why? Because we're thinking all day long. Everywhere we're at, we have thoughts going on in our mind about this, about that, and most of them are ridiculous. They're just little things that come in, right? Or we get into fear about something, or we think about the past and this situation happened, or we think about the future, and we're out of the moment because we're not restricted to yesterday's thoughts or experiences, nor are we restricted to the present. We need the future. We need to get to present time. Being connected to God now. Using these thoughts, consciousness, oneness, awareness, immovable faith. All of those. The power that created us out of itself creates our experiences through us, based on the pattern of how we give our belief. That's it. We are given to us based upon how we believe. So if the world is not happy, healthy, and abundant as you know it can be, then it's not because you do not believe, it's because you believe in the wrong thing. You believe in the lack or the separation from source. You don't believe in the faith and the oneness and the consciousness. That's what needs to change. So we can always be a change for the better reality, because we need to know that we are the perfect idea in the mind of God. If we put ourselves in the mind of God and feel that love and that joy and that oneness, that's a perfect idea of who we are in this physical form. We are made in the image of divine greatness. We are made in the image of divine health and abundance and prosperity. And we need to receive it. That's being a co-creator with God, as I talked about 3 weeks ago. In this awareness, then we can choose to be a self-thinker, a wise one, and follow a plan for successful living. If I want more success in my life, let's make a plan. What do I need to do? Change my thoughts here, 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 here. Take actions following who I'm being. Then we discover ourselves loving our life more, especially loving our abundance, and enjoying every moment of it in new and wonderful ways. Then we begin to celebrate how easy it is to devote ourselves to the never-ending self-improvement and betterment of our world. Like Neva read, it starts with us, and it passes out, and it changes the world. We all have that opportunity. So this kind of experience happens every time, beloveds, when we let ourselves go, when we move out of fear or ego, and we let ourselves be in the consciousness of God, first in being and then in action, which is what tithing is connected to the consciousness of God in action, regarding our money, regarding our health, regarding everything. Our body, the cells of our body that we pray about on Sunday mornings and do other prayer treatments for, our finances in the world will all change instantly for the better with every positive change we make in our inner expression. When we change our understanding and our belief, we change ourselves, and then we change the conditions around us, because everything is a reflection of in here. That's all. You got that? Change your understanding and your belief, and then change yourself, and then change your circumstances. If there's any doubt or fear, which we have down there, all we have to do is remember the conviction of our belief that the power that created us out of itself has all the health, the supply, all the answers that we would ever want or need coming from God. It's already there inside of us. It is the divine mind's great pleasure to give to itself as us by the way of our belief. Did you get that? We live in our lives, and God, the divine mind, is always given to itself as us through our beliefs. So we really want to open our beliefs up to totality of God, don't we? What more do I need to see, Source, in every aspect of my life? So I want you, beloveds, to open up and receive all that God has for you. That's why we have this theme, Living New Thought Through Demonstration. And that's why I had you write the goal out. We're going to demonstrate everything in our life this year. All of us are. I know that. Spirit gave me that statement, and I'm here to support and help each one of you, but you have to do the same thing. The divine potential deep in the heart of each one of you waits there in silent repose as we grow in consciousness. Think about that. God is there all the time, no separation, waiting for us to change our consciousness and accept the higher truth. When we become more aware that God is within, that God is the potential, then God becomes visible as the law of action. That's why I've said all you have to do is be one with Source, and God will provide the doing through the law of action. And it brings that potential that's sitting inside into visible form. So we could keep manifesting things all the time just by having a thought about it and believing it. And that is the form of our receiving money and tithing back to Source. Opening up and receiving it, giving it back to God, receiving it in abundance. So number 4, to end the talk, now that we've talked about faith and about receiving, a little story about tithing. David Friedman, who's a composer and lyricist of songs for faith and inspiration, shared this story that I share with you. He signed up for a 4T prosperity class, which is, and I have the books for that, by the way, through New Thought. And it was a 12-week curriculum in which you make an agreement to tithe to the church at which you're taking the course. A full 10% of all money that comes to you during those 12 weeks. The most interesting thing about it is, about this 4T program, is that when you sign a paper, guaranteed that if after 12 weeks you're not satisfied with the outcome, with the results that happen, the church will give you back your tithe, no question asked. There's a no-risk situation right there, right? Who wouldn't do that? So he did it. Now, again, he's self-employed. He's a composer, writes songs and so forth. So the first week, he made $666. Very reluctantly and with some measure of fear and irritation, he wrote a check for $66. He said he didn't like the idea of throwing away that, but that was the agreement he'd made, so he did it. The second week, he earned $31,650. Horrified, he wrote a check for $3,165, and then he asked, oh my God, how can I give away that such gigantic amount of money? The third week, he earned $21,400. Shaking and a bit irritated, he wrote out a huge check since he agreed to do that. This continued on week after week for the 12 weeks. Now, you have to understand that as a rule, he didn't always earn that kind of money. But old royalty checks, new jobs, writing assignments kept pouring in from all surprising places. Just like what I read here about unexpected income. Around the 10th week, as he was writing another huge check, he suddenly stopped and he thought, God, this is so infuriating. Just when I start this class and I agree to give away 10% of my income, I get all these big checks and I have to give away so much of it. How many of us would feel fearful like that, you know? What if I'd taken this class 3 months ago? I would have had to hardly pay anything. And then he got it. Perhaps just all that tithing I've been doing has something to do with it. Possibly. So, beloveds, we're going to share more about tithing as the spiritual aspect next week. I invite you all to come and reserve your seat. And in the meantime, I ask you to work with your consciousness. That word that's on there, your consciousness around money, around anything, until it ceases to function at the level of the problem and begins to function at the level of the answer, which God has for you. You must never permit yourself to become discouraged because the reward you're going to get is certain. Just change your thought, change your consciousness, and be open to what's going to come your way. So this is part of the goal this year, you beloved ones, okay? Be awake and watch the negative thoughts that get in the way and what you need to change. Namaste.